Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Shelly Show. I'm Shailendra, and you're watching the simulcast live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I hope you and your family are safe. COVID times. For you to view this episode and other episodes that are run on emerging technologies, influencer marketing, and other areas, I would request you to follow me so you can be alerted when a live session is on. And this gives you an opportunity to directly ask questions to the guests. So please press the follow button if you're watching this on LinkedIn. Press the subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube, and the bell icon. Press the follow button if you're watching this on Twitter, and press the like button on Facebook, and also share this with other groups which are focused on influencer marketing so people can learn from our guests today. Okay, please let me know where are you joining this from. Today is a different time. Usually we go live at around about 4 p.m. Sydney time, but today, because we are focusing more on the European region, I've got guests coming all the way from Europe today, so we've changed the time. So please tell me where are you watching this episode from, and put that in the comment section. So let's hear that out. Okay, in the last few years, marketing has significantly changed. Once upon a time, we used to look at celebrities to promote products and services. Remember George Clooney promoting Nespresso, or Kate Blanchett doing sea promotion? But with the advent of social media, some things have changed. We now have common people with credibility promoting products and services. Imagine every man is a George Clooney and every lady is Kate Blanchett. Influencer marketing that it is. So, enough of me talking. Let's start introducing our guests, our Kate Blanchetts and George Clooney's of the day. So let me bring in the first guest, our first superstar, Sally Illingworth, all the way from Sydney. Hi, Sally, how are you?
Hi, Shelley, how are you? Always good to see your face.
Good stuff, Sally. So very quickly, tell the audience about yourself and one fun fact.
Myself, so the beginning of my career was spent in consumer retail industry, predominantly in operations and strategic project management, and now I work in strategic marketing and communications. Interesting fact about me, well, now that you mentioned George Clooney, I'm excited. I'm a fan of his, but I love Excel. Most people don't know that about me.
Ah, very good. What brought you to influencer marketing?
Interesting story, actually, but it's one that you'd be familiar with. I would say that in the technology space in particular, it was actually yourself, Shailendra, that sort of inspired me to get into the space back in 2018 when we did the impact of emerging tech on retail white paper with SAP, with a bunch of experts from the industry. So that was probably the point in time where I fell in love with the concept of influencer marketing and technology, especially given I was just starting to focus on the technology sector myself.
So you're telling me I influenced you?
Yes.
Sorry, wrong decision. Let's move on to the next guest. Tim Hughes, all the way from UK. Hi, Tim. How are you?
Hi, everybody. Hi.
Good stuff. You know the drill. Introduce yourself. One fun fact.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. I was involved in a very large sales transformation back in 2014, 2015 at a large tech vendor that we probably can't mention here. I then wrote the book, Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Change Makers, which is still available on Amazon worldwide. How do I get into influence marketing? Actually, it was one of your guests, Tim Williams. I think it was back in 2014, actually. In those days, I was involved in supply chain. I ran a supply chain team across the EMEA. And I was like 15th or 20th in the Analytica supply chain influence list, and when I had a meeting with Tim, and we've had a relationship since in those what 6, 7, 8 maybe years.
I'm loving this. Everyone is influencing each other.
My little fact. Is that, and if you look on Twitter, you will find something about me about this, is that I collect vinyl records.
Cool.
I love them too. Anyways, let's get our next guest, Dr. Marcell Vollmer from Germany. Drum rolls.
Hey, Shelley, and hello all together. It's a great pleasure being here. Marcell Vollmer. I'm currently partner at BCG, Boston Consulting Group, and basically I got into influencer marketing at my time when I was at SAP. I was at SAP in total more than 14 years, and after running some internal functions, procurement, I was chief operating officer for one of the acquisitions. I became chief digital officer in the cloud business group to support customers basically defining their digital transformation strategy. And what we figured out together with marketing was we need to do something more on our leadership team. And also leaders need to build a community which I believe is a key success factors in becoming an influencer, and engage actively with them. I had a probably tough starting point back in 2017. I joined Twitter 8 years prior to that, but basically I had less than 300 followers on that. So I really made my way up and tried to share interesting content. And at the beginning, everyone was thinking about, that's a long journey and might not really be successful. And in the meantime, I'm now at 68,000 followers on Twitter, and about half of that on LinkedIn, which is quite good. And basically, I believe that this is key also when you want to share interesting news and content, not just doing the marketing, the messaging, share what you like. And I read a lot. And that's basically also my kind of secret sauce, that I share basically what I read by myself or the things what I find on the internet and believe it is worth sharing. One fun fact about me, in the past, I was traveling 5 to 6 days a week, and therefore I got addicted to chocolate. And I love energy drinks, Red Bull, so probably a very successful marketing story by itself. The sugar-free version, by the way, so I get sugar from the chocolate and the energy from the energy drink, sugar-free. That's my mix, what I do. Great being here, Shelley, and great pleasure being together.
Thank you, Dr. Vollmer. You know, I'll tell you one thing. I was at an event where I was presenting, and Dr. Vollmer was presenting as well. I walked in, did the opening, and he walked in to do the end, and both of us didn't know, and I didn't even know that SAP was there. They invited me out of the blue, and then I said, well, SAP already has someone to present here, and I'm also here. What's going on? So there are some stories going on there. From one SAP guy to the other SAP person, let's bring in Sylvie. Hi, Sylvie, all the way from France.
Yes, hello everyone from Paris. I started my career more than 30 years ago. I was an engineer at the basic, but I've never worked in technical finally, but I've always worked for technology companies from the beginning in different roles: marketing, business development, alliance management, partner management, enablement for 10 years. And 8 years ago, I've been asked to launch the social selling program within EMEA at SAP. And naturally, people came to me because I'm naturally a relationship person. So I was into LinkedIn from the beginning. I used to manage the schools and universities, so I decided to open a Twitter account for that. And I love it. It's a natural robotic extension of myself. So I went to New York to be trained by LinkedIn at that time in their headquarters. And I came back and I built all the program. Based on my experience, I wrote a book also that competes with Teams One, with his mastering social selling like a boss. It's available in English and in French. That was the first French book about that topic. It's more centered on individuals and sales than marketing. That can be also useful. And Something about myself, I'm someone who loves science. I'm a scientist at the basic. I have the logic, I have everything, but I'm also an artist. So I dance a lot. I consume dance, all forms. I dance. I read books about dance. I love to see shows. And I write. I love to write books. So I have several projects of books. I'm in a books workshop. And I love to draw as well. So I've got both sides, and I need time. I need more time to do it.
So you should get another 2 hours in a day just for this. Okay.
And I like to talk to people.
Our next guest is someone who I got, who I wrote a long LinkedIn message around about 3 or 4 years ago. And I said to him that I don't know how you actually find out these influencers, because I don't believe this. And so I know him since that time. So let me bring in Tim Williams, the CEO of Analytica. Hi, Tim.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Shirley. Nice to meet everyone.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I recall that message as if it was yesterday. So thank you very much for having me on your show. Yeah, so I'm the CEO at Analytica. We're an influence marketing platform, and we also provide agency services as well. So really, it was interesting. I first got into influence marketing when, I suppose, 2003, with my first job. I got rejected from every single sales job I went for. And then I took the first one that would have me, and it was selling political software to lobbyists. So I guess I was trying to help people influence politicians back in 2003, which is a form of influence marketing, I suppose. And so I guess I just fell into the industry and been in it, ever since I started my career. A fun fact about me, apart from having a lockdown baby, probably not too. I got 2.4 children, so that's not too interesting. But probably the one interesting thing is that I was never into social media or brands at all until I was about 30. So I think my friends probably find it a ridiculous notion that I'm running a social media company talking about branding. So there we are.
Good stuff. And just to clarify to people, this is Analytica, not Cambridge Analytica. So
Exactly.
just to clarify, no one has any notions around there.
Yeah, I'll tell you the funny story about that, actually, because I was presenting alongside a Cambridge agency, and I realized they were talking about Cambridge and Analytica, and then I felt the need to talk about the fact that we weren't that. But then I didn't want to bring people's attention to it, so I felt I was a bit I was a bit thwarted by the situation.
Okay, perfect. Before I get to the next question, the first question of mine to you guys, I would advise all the audience, guys, if you've got a question, these are the best of the best. You can't get better than them. Who have, I think amongst all 6 of us, we've got around about 700,000 followers, give or take.
Wow.
So we've got a good number of people following us. So guys, if you've got a question, this is best of the best. Please put that question in the comment section, and I'll definitely take them to these guys. We will take that question. And please don't forget to like and share this video with as many people as possible, so people know our guests. Okay, well, they do know our guests already. They are the George Clooney's and Kate Blanchett of the world in the current format. Okay, which platform is the best for influencer marketing for technology in B2B? What do you think, guys? Because I think B2C is fine. There is Instagram, and people are doing a lot of work there. What about B2B? Is Twitter a good platform, or LinkedIn? How do you look at that? So which platform do you think is the best? Let's start with Dr. Marcell.
Really happy to go first. So for me, what I experience is definitely LinkedIn #1. Because when I look at the engagement, also knowing who I'm talking to, because everyone has a picture, a real picture and a name, which makes it really easy to connect and also to share some information. And I got so many social selling requests. Hey, Marcell, good finding you here. Could you help me with this or that? We are interested in SAP products in the past, or currently also I got requests in my role as partner at BCG that people ask me, hey Marcell, what exactly do you have something on the latest trends? What you could share with me? We are interested. And basically this is what I really enjoy, and where I believe that LinkedIn is definitely a great medium to do. Twitter is fantastic for news. If you share something, I think very important as well. But honestly, on really influencing, I see more that LinkedIn is basically being a little bit more precise also in providing you opportunities, and really have also active conversations, also having large groups joining. When you put out something with 100 or my best, I think, is a little bit more than 400,000 views. You have a very active and lively discussion there, and you can also reach out and connect to the people. Therefore, this would be my favorite.
Okay, Sylvie, what do you think?
Yeah, so of course, I agree. I would add that you're not the one who are choosing the platform. Your customers are. So it depends where your audience is. If you have an audience that is a lot like L'Oreal, selling to consumers with a lot of pictures, image, definitely you have to be on Instagram, because they're also going to look at Instagram. So you need to go where your customers are. So definitely there you have to look at LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even TikTok. I saw a message yesterday from marketing asking if we could have a company TikTok account to communicate to young adults now. So you have to look at everything. Definitely LinkedIn is the biggest professional database worldwide. So of course you can't miss that. And I think the impressions that we have is very high on LinkedIn, much more than on Twitter. But Twitter is very good also for instant messaging linked to an event, for example, where people can exchange and communicate together. At Instagram, you can launch bottles in different seas depending on your audience. So all of them have their own interests.
Okay. Tim, from your side of things, when you look at influencers, which platforms for B2B in technology do you look at? Do you look at LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube?
Well, I would agree about the LinkedIn and Twitter are the places that you need to go to basically set up a position on social media. If you're looking for influencers, then I'd go to Clubhouse. And the reason for that is the fact that Clubhouse at the moment is invite only, and it's only the influencers so far that have basically got on there and are working on Clubhouse. So if you're talking about B2B and you're looking for influencers, I would look for them on Clubhouse.
You know what? Someone told me yesterday night to join Clubhouse, and I joined Clubhouse yesterday.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you very much. I don't know. I have no clue. In fact, I tried to talk to Restream to see if I can stream to Clubhouse this episode, but I didn't get an answer. But anyways, we'll figure that out one day. Okay, coming to Tim Billings before I go to Sally. Tim, what do you think? Which is the platform you look for when you look at B2B technology, influencer marketing?
Yeah, I think I would agree with with all the panelists. LinkedIn and Twitter, I think, is where we focus. I was going to bring up Clubhouse, but I wondered whether someone's going to do that. I think it's interesting what they've done with the VIP invite, because it makes it seem obviously an exclusive club. So we're monitoring that closely. I think LinkedIn is where you can connect directly to target decision makers, because you can almost see them there. I think Twitter, you can get to decision makers, but it's actually through the influencer network, because there are lots of influencers and people actually receiving some of the updates and the content, and then they share that knowledge through like dark social, maybe offline or by email or by WhatsApp. So I think there's a misconception with Twitter that it doesn't influence end decision makers, but it doesn't do it in the first network. So I think the combination of LinkedIn and Twitter work really, really well for most B2B technology marketers.
I'll agree with you. Sally, what do you think? How have you panned out? I think you started with LinkedIn, and you're not very big on Twitter. What do you think?
Yeah, it's LinkedIn's certainly my domain. I wouldn't say that I've really given any other platform as much of a chance as LinkedIn. But I think everyone's raised some interesting points. In particular, I think Sylvie's point around going where your customer is, like that's really at the heart of everything. And I think it's interesting, right? I think I agree with everyone's sentiment that LinkedIn's certainly probably the most effective platform to use. I like Tim's point in relation to, you can sort of see everything about someone, so you can be highly targeted and precise in that manner. But I think the other great thing about LinkedIn, and Marcell, you mentioned this in relation to organic reach, which is great. But the other thing about LinkedIn is, I'd say, particularly in comparison to Twitter, is what people expect on that platform. And I think that the extent to which you can have substantial conversations with people, so whether it's in an email environment or in a feed, I think Twitter is certainly good, and I'm by no means an expert to comment on that platform, but I would argue that Twitter is a lot more fast-paced, and so I think that's a big difference between Twitter and LinkedIn, and hence people tend to get far better results from LinkedIn. And I think there is a lot of data out there to suggest as well that from an ROI perspective for B2B influencer marketing, not just limited to the technology sector, marketers tend to get the best results from LinkedIn all round. So that's a pretty informative insight from the industry. But yeah, I think LinkedIn's the place to be.
Okay, so it's a combination of LinkedIn and Twitter for most of you guys, and Sally says LinkedIn. Good stuff. Now, we can't escape COVID-19 in this time and age. So, and I'm taking it 3-4 years back when, people were privy to going outside. People could go outside and do all that stuff. But now that you're so much hooked onto your phone, your screens, influencer marketing is much more important. So has COVID-19 changed the entire influencer marketing domain? Tim Williams, what do you think? I'll start with you because you look at it from that direction as well.
I was just actually looking at the question from James Marland, actually, who lives just a few minutes down the road from me, because he was so apologies for getting distracted by his comments. I was going to just answer the question about dark social.
No, we will take questions one by one in the audience Q&A.
Oh, right. Sorry, I was focusing on that question. So can you just repeat your question, Shady, because it distracted
so my
me.
question is, has COVID-19 changed the way influencer marketing has gone in the last 1-2 years? So was it? My point of view is it was growing like this, and then COVID-19 happened and it grew exponentially.
I think so. We've been analyzing a lot of the data, and we can see that the social media consumption and the posting on social channels has increased since March of last year. We've also seen that the influencers, how they've reacted. So the influencers are posting more. They're actually busier. They did have a period last year for about 3 months, from about April to June, where they had to repivot all of their offerings. But now they've come back in force. So I think that it has accelerated the industry about 5 years, because there's no physical events. Everything's digital. People are just bored of brands talking about themselves. And I think there's nowhere to go for brands apart from delivering credible content out there, and you just want to do it through third-party voices. So you want to develop the advocates, and so I think it's been wholeheartedly beneficial for the industry and just accelerated at no end.
Yeah. Sylvie, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, well, the good thing is that people are in front of their laptop the whole day now, most of them, a lot of them. So that's a good opportunity for brands to communicate to them via digital. The dark side is that you have much more competition, because you have much more people and brands creating digital marketing campaigns and changing their way of working and going there. So you have to be, well, before you had to be good, but now you really have to be good, and you have to be different, and you have to create also digital events that are not just a pale copy of physical events, but something really innovative and something creative, and that's going to attract attention. Then if we speak about the content, you really have to focus on people and their story and their objective and their success, because talking about us is just boring. And if you want to attract attention, you need to be more empathetic to what brands are living actually, and trying to speak about them and don't speak about your brand. And this is what's going to make success. And I think this is really critical at this time.
Sally, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's, and I appreciate the insights from Tim's perspective on the market. I think that's, really quite compelling, particularly with everything that's transpired with COVID. Yeah, I would certainly say that, I think from my perspective, probably one of the biggest impacts that COVID's had is really how it's necessitated, I would argue, probably the art of influencer marketing, because I think to Sylvie's point, and what Tim highlighted with, what's actually happening from a market perspective, there is a significantly more content in the market now. And, for example, we've seen, CEOs who would ordinarily not produce and deploy content on social media, they're now on there, politicians, particularly in Australia. So, there's sort of been the market's really opened up, and a lot of people who wouldn't have previously participated are. And then I think when you consider the B2B influencer market, to Tim's point, there's been some sort of economic changes there in terms of demand and supply, etc. But I'd certainly say that COVID just all around has really necessitated influencer marketing. Because, influencer marketing, especially in a B2B environment, it just does really come down to trying to, equip a campaign, if you like, or multiple campaigns, whatever the case may be, with that sort of voice of the customer perspective, to be able to do things effectively and with precision. And to Sylvie's point, not talk about yourself, talk about them. And, influencer marketers, particularly in the B2B environment, they know their audience. They know your target customer, for example. So, I think COVID's just really necessitated that, because people are really coming back to the basics of marketing. People are exhausted by, material online and sponsored. I mean, every time I see the word sponsored on something on social media, I feel like vomiting. I go, seriously, do we still need to do this? So yeah, I'm excited about what the future of influencer marketing looks like because of COVID, because I think it's forced us all to really think about the humanness of campaigns, particularly in technology, which is often missed. Yeah.
Okay, Tim Hughes, what do you think? Have you seen this?
It's been an interesting 12 months. I mean, if you look at the figures, I don't know if people see the digital research that comes out of Simon Camp. There's now 54% of the world's population, so 4.2 billion people on social media. And there's something like 15.5 new users joining social media every second. So that's the acceleration of life online. But we've also seen a transformation take place over the last 12 months. When COVID started, there was a lot about, empathy and being empathetic. And then that message has changed. For example, you started the conversation today saying, I hope everybody and your families are safe. It's a narrative that's come out over the last 12 months. One of the things that I've seen, if you look at the research from Lee Odden at Top Rank, it's the organizations that have been able to actually pivot with influencers. So in effect, they're talking to influencers as they go along. So it's not just a case of having one or two. what happens is that when they want to change the message, they've actually been in conversation, and if you pardon the metaphor, they've got influences in their back pocket, and they're able to switch those influences when the message or the need of the message and the need of the market changes. So that's what I'm seeing, and there's an acceleration on that, and the clever organizations are working on that and understanding the need in the fact that they need to switch the message and switch the influencer.
One question. Sorry, Dr. Marcell, I need to change the question a bit. You said that you've got followers over last 3 years. So have you seen an increased spike in the followers in the last 1 year compared to what it was 2 years ago? Because has COVID increased or accelerated your followership?
Shelley, I think that's a good question, and I definitely see more engagement, and the acceleration of digital transformation in general is probably the only positive thing when we talk about COVID-19, what has happened so far. And I see definitely that there is much more engagement. At the beginning, the shock almost 1 year back, mid of March, basically when the hammer came with COVID-19, everything got grounded, basically all flights canceled, conferences. Nobody was really aware, what would it mean? Is it only for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that? I think nobody would ever expect that it lasts more than 1 year. And we still don't have really a date when everything will be back to normal. And therefore, the social media engagement also accelerated. People were sitting at home from one day to another. So grounded, no conferences, as you mentioned, and really a pity that we don't have a chance to connect, to see us, to shake hands, and also to have some fun together. This has really changed and definitely increased also the activities on social media. We see this with the statistics on Netflix and the media consumption in general. Tim was very impressive about the number, 50 people join every second social media. And I think also our followers are increasing, and at least I see a lot of engagement. It is tough really to measure on a very detailed level. Probably Tim, Analytica would be the best to provide here the insights, what really happened and how this compares. But basically what I can say, definitely very, very lively engagement and interactions on social media right now.
Good stuff. Before I get to my next question, guys, if you're watching this, please like and share this particular session with as many people as possible so that people can learn from our guests. Also, if you've got a question, please put that in the comment section. I have a dedicated audience Q&A where I'll ask questions to these guests. If you've got that question in the comment section, and I'll pick that and I'll call you out as well. So guys, also please let me know where are you dialing in and watching this episode from. Okay, next question, guys. People are running influencer marketing campaigns. What is the success criteria that you see in B2B technology, influencer marketing campaigns? You run a campaign. Is that the viewership? Is that the leads? Is that the conversion? What drives a successful influencer marketing campaign? And I'll start with the girls this time around and start with Sally.
Me? Sorry, I was just looking at the comments from everyone. I figured out how to find it. Successful criteria. I think there's a lot to it, right? And you know, you can't really answer this in a couple of minutes. But I'd certainly say one of the key things, and Tim Hughes used this word before, narrative. You know, I think narrative design, messaging design, etc., is very, very critical because only then can you successfully and effectively integrate an influencer into a campaign where they get the maximum utility out of it, and so does your company, if you like, as well as the target audience. So I'd certainly say that's one of the most critical pieces of the puzzle. And then the other thing I'd say that's really key to a successful B2B influencer marketing campaign in the technology sector, it really comes down to technical subject matter expertise. So, making sure that, and this can be quite challenging, particularly for, some organizations, whether it's for cultural reasons or otherwise, Often there's not that much, whether you want to call it cooperation, collaboration, consideration between, if we just want to generalize it and talk about, technology departments, IT departments, and marketing, etc. So, traditionally there is quite a large disconnect often, and people in, say, a marketing arena don't appreciate the skills of people in the technology arena. So, I think ensuring that whoever the key stakeholders are within a campaign, from design to deployment, that between your technical people and your creative people, that you ensure that the ways of working are really aligned to ensure that the marketing department, if you like, can get the best out of the technology people, and then that also includes integrating an influencer marketer into the mix. I think that's really critical. Otherwise, you sort of miss the mark often, particularly when it comes to narrative design.
Sylvie, you've worked on social selling. This is your sweet spot. So tell us, what are the criteria that you look for?
Well, for me, the most important is business. So I would say, of course, it's important to have statistics and analytics about the number of likes, the number of comments, the number of reactions, and every criteria that marketing follow. But we have to go further and go to transformation, opportunity creation, because finally we do all this for that. We don't do marketing campaigns to have success with marketing campaigns. And especially that we know that there are a lot of observers that are silent. They don't react, but they see, and where they are after that contacted by sales, sometimes they say, yeah, I've seen, I've followed, I know, I've learned from you before. So I think the most important is really the opportunities and the business created out of those campaigns, which relates to the collaboration between marketing and sales. That is crucial. If marketing creates campaign that does not match with sales needs, it's a problem. And if sales do not help to have the great audience for marketing, it's also a problem. So they need a great collaboration. That's it. And I would say, of course, we are in an analytical company. We have tools for that. So don't take me wrong. I think all analytics around this are crucial. And there's also intangible results, which is finally the brand perception. And we know now that the best sales are done when customers know us. And know us not only because we're just advertising on us, but know us because of our expertise and that create trust and also communities. So I think everything has to be taken into account.
Absolutely. Dr. Vollmer, what do you think? What are the key success criteria that you look for a campaign that you run? Viewership, conversion, leads?
So basically, I think, first of all, what is very important is authenticity. So being authentic and really sharing also something which is worth and not just a marketing campaign. Basically, I try more to do it in a way that I share relevant content. I believe it's relevant, and basically it's up then to my followers to decide. And also I see it on the likes, the views, the comments, what you have, the active social media engagement, which I really enjoy. And basically, I try to learn from that also. What is really good, what works, like videos, or Tim mentioned Clubhouse. It's amazing. I think it's a little bit probably too early because it's really more close group at this point in time, which might accelerate pretty soon. But I think really identify the target group and the people you want to reach out. And I think you need to do that you share not only just marketing or relevant content, which might bring you and lead hopefully in the future to a customer. I think it is also very important that you be active and also have information you share worth basically reading, seeing. When you watch a video content, by the way, is really great. And that's more where I'm focusing on, not so much really the targeted marketing, but probably that's also due to my different roles, Chief Digital Officer or now a partner at BCG. And I'm not in marketing. I'm focusing on digital transformation. So therefore, I'm a little bit broader also from the scope what I do. So these are my 2 cents basically on how to best engage.
Okay, Tim Hughes.
For me, the key success criteria is to create conversations. The problem that brands have is that they go to the market and basically say, buy my product because it's great. And everybody does that. So you get brands and saying exactly the same thing in the marketplace, and it just confuses consumers and buyers. So the reason why we use influencer marketing is that it enables brands, in effect, to have a human face to what is, in effect, a robotic face of the brand. And really what we're trying to do, therefore, is use the influencers and their network to give reach. Because at the moment, most people, if you think about them, their LinkedIn network, it will be ex-colleagues and recruitment consultants, which isn't a network. And so we're using the influencer to basically to get out and to reach new people and then have a conversation. Why do we want conversations? Because conversations create sales. Webinars, brochures, they don't create conversation. They don't create sales, but conversations do.
Interesting. I have a point of view on that, but I'll come to that after Tim. Tim, how do you look at campaigns when you look at influencer marketing campaigns?
Yeah, I think this has been a fantastic conversation. I really agree with everyone, but it's all about the narrative, it's about the community relationships and the inspiring content. And I think we've just got to move away from boring B2B and create content that people want to consume. So, yeah, of course, you could integrate influencers with webinars. That's going to drive more leads probably than doing something on a Twitter chat, for example, which might create more of an announcement. Of course, you can look at the tactical nature, but interestingly, when we've surveyed the influencers, because we surveyed 350 B2B influencers, and actually it was whether the influencers were allowed input into the brief, which drove a lot of the success criteria. So actually putting a different spin on it, 70% of the influencers who felt that they could contribute to the brief to create inspiring content felt that the campaign was much more successful. So I know I'm deviating slightly, but I think the whole point we're trying to mention here is create content that you would want to consume that's interesting. You can turn a video into lots of different content assets, and you can push it towards demand gen or social selling or awareness campaigns, and that's the marketing tactics and how you cascade it through your organization. But the key is to create really interesting content that people are going to start talking about, as Tim was saying, or the whole narrative, as Sally was saying, how you can design that. Sylvie was talking about the community relationships. It's all about community, and I love Marcell's comments about the audience engagement and how much conversation it's been driving through lockdown. So I think we're all talking about the quality of the content and the intangible metrics, which should be at the beginning. You can then monetize the content thereafter with clever tactics.
So that reminds me of a couple of things. One, we did that experiment where Sally was involved. That was the first ever white paper we created. We just got the concept was we had 3 retail experts, we had 2 influencers, couple of journalists, and we wrote a white paper on future of emerging technologies in retail, something like that. That white paper became such a hit that we created around about 30 leads. Now, a very big number if you look at even a conversion of a couple of those leads. So it does work. And the reason why I say that is because in my previous life, I was doing a project where we were allocating sales dollars to the marketing spend. So how much you've spent, because the customer who's actually watching you, who's actually going to buy a product, doesn't go and buy a product because he sees something in the catalog he's been influenced over a period of time. If, for example, if he's buying an iPhone, for instance, or an Android phone, then in that case, he's been influenced over a period of time through hoardings, through reviews, through what he sees on the LinkedIn page or a Twitter page, and that actually contributes to what leads to a sale. So how do you take that sale dollar and attribute it into all the components of marketing? And that was very interesting exercise, because you could actually drive a journey of a customer on what all touch points he's been seeing that particular brand, exposure to that brand, and that's what led to that particular project, that particular sale. I think that's an important aspect to remember as well, that it's not only about that sale, because that sale, the guy who's actually sold it is just the end person. There's the story behind it. There are so many things that has happened behind it. So yeah, that's where that comes to mind as well. Okay, enough of my blabbering. Next question, and I'll quickly talk about this. There are lots of influencer marketers, or there are lots of talent in the business, in the world, where people want to become influencer marketers. They don't have that kind of, they may not have that kind of followership at the moment, but they still have the talent, they still have the knowledge. What is your advice to those guys? What do you think they should do to become influencers in the market? And I would start with Tim Williams this time, because Tim, you would know that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think if you've got the expertise, just join the community, like find out where the conversation is, find out who the influential voices are, and go and add value to that conversation. If you don't have any influence now, you can engage the audience of the influencers by adding value. That's just something that is a small step that you can do on a daily basis. Once you start getting more confident about social engagement and writing articles and so forth, then you can build up your audience. So don't obsess about the number of followers. Just speak to the people that are out there, that are talking around the topical community, and you will get opportunities from there. So that's from an individual point of view. And from an influencer marketing point of view, I think that if you keep all of the advice on this panel front of mind, where is your audience, what do they care about, create interesting content, then you will be able to get results and see it as the longer term journey. So I guess that's my advice. Don't obsess about having hundreds of thousands of followers if you're starting out, because you can, within a couple of years, build up a sizable following. And if you've got 500 followers, but they're the right 500 people, then you can access 10,000 or 20,000 people by posting some interesting content. So don't feel like it's too late, and just start a good conversation and keep up the consistency.
Okay, Marcell, what's your advice?
Shelley, I think basically start with building a community, and really also you should feel comfortable with what you are doing. So if you share something, what I like to do, basically I read it anyhow. It's a little bit a different purpose, and bringing back to what I said about authenticity, which I believe is very important. And Tim was perfectly right about saying also it is at the end important that you connect to the right people. And for me, there are two elements in it. Number one is building a community helps you that you can outreach, that people recognize you. This is definitely helping you. But at the end, what really counts is if it's 500 or even if it's 50, I think would be 50, would be really already great if you build a strong community about a topic you are genuinely interested in. And this is really where I believe that you have really benefits when you build a community, engage actively, being authentic, and then build your network and also nurture your network. work. You need also to invest time and commit yourself of what you're doing. My recommendation is always only do what you like to do and have fun with that. If you don't like it, and if you just do it because, hey, that's my job, it's marketing, it's part of my role, things like that, you might not really be very successful in building a strong and lively community, engaging and discussing topics. So that's something where at least my approach, what I have seen, what works quite successfully and might be interesting for people joining. And I couldn't agree more on, Tim, what you said. It is never to start. I joined 4 years back. So basically, I'm also, I wouldn't say a newbie anymore, but still not so long in that business. And therefore, it is never too late, and do, if you like it, if you have fun, and think about the time commitment, what you do.
Mm-hmm. Tim Hughes, what do you think?
If you want to start being an influencer, then you need to look at two things. One is your passive social presence, and the other is your active social presence. So your passive social presence is your LinkedIn profile, your Twitter profile. And most people's at the moment will be like a CV, or you'll look like a spammer. And if you start connecting with people and talking to people, I'm sorry, you won't get very far. And the other thing is that you need to look at what you're posting, because most people will basically be posting corporate stuff. Again, you'll just look like a spammer and you won't get very far. So the three things you need to look at is, first of all, is your profile. And no one's interested in your company or your products. Sorry, but nobody is. The second thing is you need a network. Most people, their network is ex-colleagues and recruitment consultants. That's useless to you. And the third thing you need is content. And you either need to get that content from things like Flipboard, or what you need to do is create content yourself. The best content always is to create it yourself. But otherwise, I agree with everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Sally, what's your advice to the new influencers who want to be the wannabes?
Yeah, this is an exciting part of the conversation. I think, a couple of things. I certainly agree with the sentiment that, really the best place to start is by focusing on building out your own community or audience, whatever you prefer to refer to it as, because at the end of the day, if you operate in any way, in any capacity as a B2B influencer, you're doing it because it's your job to serve your audience, which are the target audience for a particular campaign. So the best place to start is not try and get, 1 million followers, 200 million followers overnight or anything to that effect, but, work on your messaging, determine what you're passionate about, and figure out, what audience can you actually serve. And sometimes you have to be really honest with yourself about that. I mean, there's certain things I'm interested in, but I could by no means build out a solid, authentic audience organically around that, and then be an effective B2B influencer, because it's just not my space. I'm not good at it, or whatever the case may be. So I'd say that's the first thing, is getting clear on what audience you want to serve, and then working on getting better and better at communicating with them, because that's what influence largely comes down to, is communication. And whether that's, to Tim Hughes' point, in an active or a passive sense, it all comes down to communication. The other thing I'd say is, in terms of, as an influencer or wanting to become one, and setting benchmarks for yourself or KPIs when it comes to follower count, I think, just generally speaking, we've sort of gotten ourselves into a difficult position in the world of social media, where there is a lot of deception around, what it means to actually influence. Like, as you mentioned, Shailendra, you mentioned George Clooney at the beginning, and he influenced things. And one, that got me excited, but two, that goes to show that influencer marketing and the concept of influencing certainly isn't new. It just comes down to, something we do naturally. But I think, to sort of go back to my point, a challenge we've got is we're in this world now where, it's perceived that the more followers you have, the more influential you are. But particularly in the business community, I would argue that that's not always the case. So, to Tim Williams' point, yes, your follower count will grow over time, once you get better at what you're doing and serving an audience, but it's not all about the follower count, because, there are some people that may only have, their own dedicated audience of 20,000 people, but they're far more effective at influencing those 20,000 than someone who's got 100,000, and, it's a scattered audience or whatever the case may be. So I suppose the moral of the story there from my point of view is don't marry yourself to the follow account. What it really comes down to is how can I actually quantify and qualify whether or not I'm influencing what people think and therefore the decisions they're going to make, because that isn't defined by a follow account. So, yeah.
Sylvie.
Yeah, so I agree 300% to everything that was said by the panelists. What I would like to add to that is you're not going to be an influencer in 5 minutes. So if you start from nothing, it's like a snowball. At the beginning, it's quite small, and then it's rolling and getting bigger. And then finally, you realize you have an audience just because you're talking, you're interesting. People are coming, people are talking about you, because you're doing things in life as well. You're doing conferences, or you are meeting customers, and you ask them to come to your network. So you're building that step by step. Of course, the audience is so important, because if you have no one in the room, you're going to talk to an empty room. So even if your content is good, nobody is going to hear it. So you have to watch your audience, and with a quality. I think quality versus quantity is key. Don't accept anyone in your network. Just choose the people. Looking at your objectives, and again, it's what you want to achieve that is important. Of course, the topics, so the content and the way you deliver the content. Be genuine, be yourself, be human. You have the right to do mistakes. You're not a robot. I mean, if you do a video, it can be a bad video. If the sound is good and if you're talking frankly and true, it will go out. I'm always myself. I mean, sometimes I'm not so professional, but whatever, it's me. And I like chocolate, by the way, Tim, as well. So I can speak about chocolate, and I will drag people to me just because of chocolate, and then they will listen to professional things afterwards because they like, and I have that chocolate community. So, I mean, there's no barriers between what you are and what you want to show and what you want to talk about. And then you need to be creative. Think about, oh my God, I have to speak about that event and it's going to get boring for everyone. How can I do it differently so that I drag people to it? And that takes time. You need to think about the kind of messages you're going to pull out. And sometimes I just make a complete flop. I just try to speak about SAP things, and that's it just go down, and I just told to my network, I think, what did I do wrong? And then tons of people are answering, and then I have the audience coming back. So, and the last thing I would say is, one of the last thing is the cadence. It's important to have a cadence. So to say, okay, I'm ready to invest time to post once a week or twice a week or every day, but try to keep a cadence. It's important also for the algorithm, and especially on LinkedIn, it's important if you want the system to pull out messages to your audience, which is not the case. I don't know if you know, but when you post a message, all your network does not get the message. So you have also to be active with all the people you want to reach, with them, to interact with people, go to their profile, answer their questions, comments, so that you create relationship with people. So it's not just talking. It's a mix of lots of different actions. And the last thing I would say this time is go into communities. I believe a lot in communities because this is where you create trust, engagement, and then when you will share a message to people, they will come naturally to you because they know you.
And my advice to Chensworth is don't be everything. Create a brand around a particular topic or an idea. Don't try to be a leader and an HR person and a marketeer and an analytics person and a machine learning and a BI and an AI and everyone. Don't try to be everyone. Be one. Who you are and be yourself. Okay, guys, that was it. Let's get to the audience Q&A very, very quickly. There we go. I thought I'd do something nice this time. Sorry. Okay, let's quickly get to the audience. Okay, regularly says hi to everyone who are on board. Christian Gillette, hi Christian, how are you? Hi everyone, hi Shailendra, hi committee. We love, we care, we share inspiring experiences. James Marlin, hi James, how are you? Twitter versus LinkedIn. Has this changed over the last couple of years? What do you think, guys?
That's a great question. Probably in the US, there was something happening that Twitter got much more prominent due to a recent president. But overall, I think for me, at least, engaging with the community, building it, and I think we really discussed it, and LinkedIn is definitely the community you can engage and connect with the people you want to do business or just share some thoughts. I like it personally more, and for me, it has not really significantly changed, I would say. But great question, James. Thanks.
Anyone else want to address that?
Well, I just would like to say that LinkedIn is one of the best places finally to make people know you, because you have much more ability to share details rather than Twitter. So you have your profile. I compare that to a showcase, and that showcase will manage to have people coming into the store. So you can show a lot of things and show about yourself, about your company, about your passion. So this is what I like in LinkedIn.
I think the big thing that's changed about LinkedIn is that they've closed all the APIs. And so you can't get the information after the Cambridge Analytica scandal. Whereas on Twitter, it's because it's an open network, it's so much different. But they're changing all the time, and they will forever change.
Hey, James says, Twitter is good for virtual events, especially when the official platform is not set up for comments. And I think that's true. Guys, any comments on that?
Twitter is an excellent platform. I mean, one of the biggest uses for is Twitter chats. There's Twitter chats across all kinds of industries, verticals, even in small towns. There's things. It is actually it's actually quite it's okay for comments. But the thing though with these sort of events is that I immediately, because I knew that there was questions coming, I actually moved the screen so I couldn't see the comments, because it distracts. And the great thing about Clubhouse is the fact that there's no comments, there's no video, and there's no comments. So it's a pure discussion. It's interesting how social is actually changing.
Well,
so we do the next on Clubhouse, I would say.
Before Marcell, you go, let me say one thing. I'm exactly like you, because I have to run this. I don't open the comment section up until that is the audience Q&A. Otherwise, I get distracted looking at comments there. So I actually don't even know. I just look at the number and say, well, oh, yeah, they're 18, they're 20. They're increasing good. That's all it is. But I'm not reading any of the comments. That's why. Anyways, Dr. Marcell, you had to say something?
Really, I was just adding to what Tim said. Probably we should do next time a Clubhouse session. Definitely would enjoy that.
I'm doing one this afternoon, so
Tim,
I'll organize one. I'll organize one. I'll invite you all.
Let's do it.
Awesome.
Good stuff. That's a good one. Okay, next, James Marlin, Dark Social. Can Tim elaborate? Tim, this is the one for you.
Yeah, and I did get sidetracked earlier, so I just validated your comments just now. So dark social is a very misunderstood concept. So it's when we go off this particular chat and we might be just chatting to people over the phone. People still talk to each other over the phone nowadays. Email, all of this is not trackable, but these are social interactions. So actually the influencing part is often in the first or second degree of the network on the social channel, but then people have conversations in meetings. And just because you can't measure it as a marketer doesn't mean that it's not how people are being influenced. So the combination of social sharing on social platforms and dark social is how influencers can influence the C-suite or key decision makers. And that's something that's very, very hard for senior management to understand, because they just see on a social post 60 likes and they say, well, how is that, affecting my ROI? How is that affecting the bottom line? And dark social,
there's some research from
really
IBM
key.
that shows that dark social is at least something like 70-80% of the amount of social that's actually used. So if you think about, switch that the other way around, if you think about Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Clubhouse, that's only 20% or 30% of the amount of social media or the social interactions over media that's actually that are taking place.
Absolutely.
And as you say, Tim, for some people that's really difficult to get their head around.
Yeah, because if you can't measure it, then people won't put budget behind it, because it's playing the longer term game. So it's a massive challenge for marketing, I think.
Okay, next move on to the next question. Amit Kurekar, Amit says, how big of a role is influencer marketing playing in overall marketing spending of a company, for B2B and B2C companies?
Tim.
I was just going to say, can I offer, just before you jump in, Tim, 2 cents there, just sort of, particularly in the B2B space, I'd certainly say, over time it will continue to trend upwards. But one thing, and Tim, you can probably speak to this better than I, but it was actually only a few weeks ago that, by coincidence now we're on this live together, but in speaking with one of your team members at Analytica, there was some research that you guys had done in relation to, I think it's sort of the motives as to why someone may want to be a B2B influencer and what they expect to get out of campaigns ordinarily. And interestingly, on the spend point, I think getting paid for an initiative was actually one of the lower motives as to why someone does it, based on that research that your firm had pulled together. Because interestingly, a large motive for a lot of influencers themselves, so this doesn't answer the marketing spend question, but in the context is that as a cost input, if you like. A lot of people are quite happy to get involved in, low intensive campaigns on the basis that it supports them professionally to elevate their own credibility, etc. So I'll just sort of throw that out there as food for thought.
Yeah, well, I definitely think that that's really interesting concept. The influencers, yeah, of course, influencers who are professional do it for their day job, want to be paid, but it's not their primary reason for accepting a brief. It's really the quality of the work that they want to put out, because they've got an audience as well. Of course, if they get paid well and they can do it, then that's fantastic. So that's been really, really interesting here in the influence community. In terms of the overall spend, I think some brands are spending a large part of their budget on influence marketing. Other brands are not spending any, but we are seeing that second wave of companies joining the influence marketing bandwagon. So the early adopter phase, I think, has finished, especially in technology. And there are lots of companies now saying, we're not doing anything about this. This is as big as AI. I think there's lots of research out there which is saying that influence marketing is one of the hottest tactics in technology. So I think that the spend is starting. People are starting pilot programs, and then if they're successful, then they start maybe generating 5 or 10% of their budget into sort of brand ambassador, influencer marketing type programs. But I expect to see this increase because PR is influencer marketing as well. Analyst relations, investor relations, it's all influencer marketing. So I think influence marketing is quite an ambiguous term when you come to influencer advocacy, because what Sylvie is talking about, social selling, that's also a form of influence marketing, but just through your employees. So we see the trend increasing. I can't give you a percentage, but it's definitely on the up.
Okay. Anyone else wants to add to that, or should I move on?
Yeah, I agree. So social selling is one thing, but employee advocacy is another one, and both need to work together. And of course, involving employees and teaching them how also to communicate and being an influencer is a big thing. And that's actually my work. I work for a group of people that have expertise, and I help them to learn how to influence their market and their industry.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Okay, while we are in Sylvie, next question from, next comment from James, saying, spot on Sylvia, too many digital events just replicate the old convention hall experience.
Yeah, that's really a question, but so I have an answer to that, and I think as I said, we're quite creative. I'm very proud of my company for that. I think we make a lot of efforts, and in Europe, we have created an event that was a virtual event, but as if you were into rooms, as if you could circulate. I can't describe that, but what they did is that they took, software that are used for visiting houses and apartments in 3D. You could walk into rooms and you could have ask questions, have demos, so you have virtual people welcoming you. You could speak to customers. So that was, I think, very creative and very new. I'm in technology for 30 years, so I'm used to all this, and I was amazed. I was amazed by the creativity of that. And I think this is one thing that is very important. And because I was amazed, I shared that with social. So a lot of people say, "Oh wow," and I'm coming. So I think it's important to have the way you present things. It's like in cooking, if it's beautiful in your plate, it must be good, right? So I think this is why I think that is important, and because people have to choose. And they do not just choose on quality, they choose also on how it is presented.
Okay. Next question is from Bridget Kleinschmidt. She says, Clubhouse has come under criticism from a data protection perspective in the EU. How would you handle that when doing social media for your company? Who wants to have that? Tim?
I think that all companies need to be aware of GDPR. I mean, this is for this event is for Europe. Obviously, there's other data protection and consumer protection law that's coming out in the US at state level. And 2018 was a major transformation, I think, for many people in marketing. Certainly, the amount of spam I get has reduced, which is fantastic. And we need to take those things into account. The converse to the thing is everyone's tracking you with a mobile phone. So, everybody does. So we need to make sure that we get a balance.
Anyone else? Tim? Marcell?
I don't have too much to add on that. I think that it's a massive challenge, and otherwise I think we'll be talking for hours about data protection. But it's a good question.
Well, the other thing is that on Clubhouse, are you utilizing Clubhouse to evaluate people's influencing power, or not yet?
Haven't yet. To be honest, I'm waiting to be invited. But Shaylee,
I'll send you an invite, Tim.
Thank you so much.
Can I have one too, Tim?
But I definitely think it's interesting. I mean, in B2B, a lot of people saying, "Oh, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok are the next big things." I think people are trying it out. Sylvie, you mentioned it, but when I go to conferences and say, "Are you investing in Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok?" Most B2B marketers are still trying to get the LinkedIn and Twitter strategies right. So until I see the critical mass, changing, then we're not going to invest too much time. But I think Clubhouse is definitely interesting. Actually, our investor, Michael Birch, is restarting Bebo. So maybe Bebo will be the next social networking site. So
Bebo was the first social networking site I ever used, just for the record. So that's exciting.
Yeah. So and hopefully, since he's our investor, then we will get direct API access. So so who knows what the next social network is going to be? But Clubhouse is definitely an interesting one to watch.
So there are social networks that you don't think about. So for example, I used in France in a community made by a banker around digital. He is using Discord. And Discord is a tool that is used by gamers usually, but it's a kind of very rich WhatsApp, right? It's you can have different folders with different topics, and people can talk together. You can also have talks, voice talks, and you can have events in that. So it's quite rich as a feature, and you can drive a community there. And he has invited lots of people, and we are inviting lots of people. And every day we have morning coffee, we have evening drinks, so there's a mixture between professional exchange and even creating friendship. It's quite a mix. And now there's, I think there's 500 people in there, just speaking about digital. And each time I do something, some of them react now because they're coming to me because we are exchanging in this community. So it's just a different platform, but very useful. And I think we can call that also social media.
Can I just add to that point, Shelley, quickly? I think Sylvie raises an interesting point, and I think the recent situation with how, micro networks, if you like, on Reddit and 4chan managed to significantly influence a market for, I believe it was GameStop or something like that. I think it's interesting, to Sylvie's point, to consider how, sort of ordinary discussion forums like Reddit and 4chan in effect, potentially have just as much power at influencing real world things as, social media platforms. So in that sense, we may not ordinarily consider them social media platforms, but the way in which people interact with one another, develop loyalty towards one another, etc., is quite similar. So to Sylvie's point, I think it's quite a compelling thing to consider is, what really is a social network in today's day and age, because it could be many of things, because we can communicate in so many different ways that it's not really, just social media platforms that brand themselves as social media platforms that enable those sorts of communities to be built anymore. So,
Good stuff. Hope, Bridget, you got the answer. Next comment from Angelo. Angelo, hey! Interesting panel discussion.
Hi, Angelo.
Hi, thank you.
You know what? Me and Sally are very good friends with Angelo. So, hi, Angelo, once again. Bridget turns around and says, great done. It was very inspirational. Thank you. Thank you, Bridget. Hope you liked it. Ishmael says, I love that Q&A intro.
We all do.
Wanted to put some spice in it. Good, you liked it. James says, interesting. I always answer questions when they come up. Interrupt myself if needed. And James said to you, both things, very interesting. Thank you very much. Okay, one question. Why do some LinkedIn members lock their profile from accepting requests to connect by requesting an email address? Doesn't that deter sharing, engaging, and learning from the broader community? Ishmael Pabanga, if I've got it right, I think he's from Africa. Who wants to take that?
I'll offer 2 cents, and I think it's subjective, right? I wouldn't say that there is one straightforward answer as to why people do or don't do that. I think it's personal preference. So for some people, for example, it may be a part of their own personal individual security strategy on LinkedIn to mitigate getting notifications that they don't think are solicited. It could be anything really, but I think there's, sort of the flip side to that is in some cases for certain people, particularly if they are a very high profile, I think it just helps them to mitigate a lot of the digital noise that they don't need, meaning that if someone wants to, really keep up to date with my stuff, they'll elect to follow me. They don't need to connect with me. And there's also, I think in some cases, an element of, scarcity as well, which can actually be quite powerful if you do leverage that effectively. So for example, in the case of an influencer, using a feature like that on LinkedIn, if done well, and all things considered, it could actually be quite an effective strategy for you in terms of driving follower count, because instead of having people send you connection requests that aren't that close to you, if you like. You know, they'll have to opt for the follow button, because when someone sends you a connection request and you don't accept it, it doesn't always by default convert them to a follow. So in some senses, it can be a very good strategy. But I think to Ishmael's point, yes, there's probably some initial perception that it discourages engagement, but you know, I think each to their own sort of thing. Yeah.
Anyone else wants to add?
If I'm not wrong, LinkedIn protected the audience from spamming. They do not want people to, for example, extract the database and send them tons of messages. So it's also a protection, and by default, you cannot send a message to someone you're not connected to if you don't have a specific license or with the basic license. And if you want to have an open profile, you have to specify it in the settings that you're open to receive messages or invitations. So this is why also a lot of people are writing to you as an invitation, because they absolutely want to write to you, so they do that trick. They try to write to you through invites. But I think at the basic, it's a protection. And
I think for me, social media is the world's biggest democracy. You know, if you don't like me, then you don't need to follow me, and you don't need to connect to me. You can even disconnect from me. And everybody who follows me and is connected to me every day, in effect, they're making a choice to stay connected. And people who set up and say that they want an email, they're fundamentally missing the point of social media and what a network is about. I mean, every time I had someone the other day, they actually had around their picture open to network, and you couldn't send them a message. I mean, that's someone who's must be obviously doesn't understand what LinkedIn is there for. And you know, we all have a choice. If someone sends a connection request, you can reject it. I'll say that again. You can reject it. You do not need to connect to people. And so, you know, whenever I see it, I always think, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you a message saying, I was going to place an order for $1 million with you, but because I can't get hold of you, I'm not going to place that order.
I don't want to take up much of your time because I know I just spoke, but just to also add for what it's worth, I think it's still interesting because if you speak to LinkedIn, they'll still tell you that they think people should only connect with people they actually know on LinkedIn. So when you talk about a conversation about influencer marketing and LinkedIn, which we're all saying is the go-to platform, LinkedIn as a platform, as a business, as a product, still believes you should only connect with people that you know, hence they still have the 30,000 direct connection limit. And so it's a really interesting thing to consider, right? Because, you know, most users, particularly those...
They may say that, but they also say that you should connect to people.
Yes, I understand that, but it's interesting to consider their stance as a platform and therefore the measures, if you like, that they keep in place. It's quite fascinating. And I think over time, it'll be interesting to see how users, say like us who are all passionate on this call, how that eventually influences them potentially to reconsider why do people use LinkedIn, you know, and what do people...
I mean, they've been tightening the terms and conditions. So if you look at the, Sylvia mentioned clause 8.2, and, you know, they've actually been emailing people. If you have your LinkedIn profile run by somebody else, they will be contacting you because that's clause 8.1, and that's illegal. If you're using chatbots to basically scrape the data, which is what Sylvia mentioned, that's 8.2. And they've also been sending emails to people that have been sending lots of connection requests. So they recognize the problems, and they're currently dealing with it and doing something about it.
So I've got a very different perspective to offer. So if you get someone that you know is actively trying to sell to you that you don't want their service, I sometimes think, yeah, I'm not going to buy from them, I'm not going to listen to them. But actually, if they interact with my content, then their network probably has lots of marketers that actually might be interested in my content. So, you know, as long as they're not really spamming, I see it as organic reach. I see it as a network that can push content around. I personally am not too worried about people. I mean, yeah, I get like 10 to 15 per day people trying to sell me stuff, but I just look at whether they're around the marketing kind of sector, and I'm quite relaxed about it. I'm not up to 30,000, so I think you are, Sally. So if I'm correct. So I don't get that problem of like accepting people or rejecting people. But I appreciate all the comments, but I see it as an organic reach, open platform, and I'm not too bothered about the people selling to me.
Me too. I get sold every day at least 10 or 12 different products. That's good. People want to sell something to me. I like that. Next one. Laszlo Adam. This is from Budapest. I know he said that earlier. So our reach is at Budapest as well. I like it. Do followers, influencers, more even the platform providers, we all learn how to behave, use and build these social interactions. It is a journey. We are still at the beginning, especially in the B2B area. Would you agree, guys?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Spot on, Laszlo.
2 yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll go after you, Sally.
Sorry? 2 years what? Sorry, I'm trying to understand. What's the word?
Beginning.
Beginning.
Oh, it's spelled wrong.
Just trying to test you out at night.
I don't have lights on. I didn't think about this with the sun going down.
So I can answer that. A lot of influencer marketing has been the Wild West, where I've seen the top global tech companies, like 100 companies, try to work with the same 50 people. And that was just phase one. And a few people got rich out of it. Companies need to go into phase two. So it's probably in like the iteration phase 4, phase 5. But now that the early adopter phase has finished, then I think we're starting to have the proper conversation about what real influencer marketing really is, which is great. So I still think we're at the beginning, but there's a maturity cycle, and we're definitely not at that sort of critical mass just yet.
I think I was just trying to interpret the question. So saying like, sort of where are we along the life cycle of being at the maturity stage? I'd sort of to add to Tim's comments. I think particularly on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's an interesting platform in the sense that yes, it's been around for quite a while. Yes, people have used it for B2B influencer marketing purposes for quite some time, but the platform has really transformed, I'd say, since around the end of 2017, particularly when LinkedIn released their video feature, because what we saw happen in that instance was LinkedIn, and still there's a lot of people with this mindset, but LinkedIn went from being this platform that was predominantly focused on you only use it if you want to find a job, and if you're using it to find a job, you don't really tell anyone you're using it. Or you're on there, you may refer to some content, but from what I understand, in the very early days of LinkedIn, only select people could actually publish any sort of content, including in the form of an article. So what happened, and to use a word I believe Hughes used earlier around democracy, what happened was when LinkedIn released the video feature, one, it started to sort of, get on par, if you like, with other social media platforms that were already using video. But the other thing it did was really just democratize content on LinkedIn and really transform the way people use it. So, previously it may have been largely run by the recruitment industry, and they were the predominant users of it. So, sort of the world was their oyster, and they were maybe pulling most of the strings. But then what happened from a content perspective is now people are going to LinkedIn and they'll sit there and scroll the newsfeed, like they'll scroll the newsfeed on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. Whereas just it's important to remember a few years ago that wasn't really the case. So I think in that sense, when you're thinking about sort of the evolution of B2B influencer marketing and what stage of maturity it's at, when you specifically focus on the LinkedIn platform, to Tim's point, I think it's still very much in its infancy because the platform itself has just drastically transformed. And now it really is about going, okay, well, to the part of the conversation earlier around metrics, what metrics matter and how do we actually measure influence and how are we quantifying this and qualifying this, because everyone knows B2B sales don't happen overnight. So, what approach are we taking to actually measure the effectiveness of a campaign using an influencer in that environment? So that's my 2 cents. I'll stop now.
So the change that I'm seeing in influencer marketing is one from paid media to earned media. Traditionally, if you think about the way that businesses go to market, it's a company that stands up and basically stands up on top of the building shouting, buy my product because it's great. And of course, no one's interested and no one listens. So what they do is that they give the megaphone to someone like Marcell, who's an influencer, and Marcell stands there and goes, buy this product because it's great. Again, it's still paid media. It's still an advert. And again, nobody listens because it's in effect, even though the brand isn't speaking, we have an influencer speaking. We're not interested unless we're really, really, really interested in what Marcell is saying. So, and what we're seeing is a shift from the use of paid media to actually going to someone like Marcell and say, Marcell, what's your opinion about this? Okay, let's produce a piece of branded content where you express your opinion, and we'll put that out through your channels and your audience. That gives the brand reach. They're not buying the reach, they're actually getting organic reach. And that's the change that I'm seeing taking place in influencer marketing.
Yeah, I agree.
I believe
This is exactly, yeah,
exactly this way, because when we see now what's happening right now, the paid influencers, I think they are really changing the profile by promoting certain content from companies they are getting paid from. I think it's fair, you can do that, but basically it's also changing a little bit the status and the role what you have and how you can really influence other people, I would say.
Okay, before I go to the last question from the audience, one comment, I think Sally's comment on LinkedIn. Interesting story. So I met someone a couple of weeks ago, shared mobile numbers. So today morning I sent them a message saying, well, I'm going live in the evening. Please come and watch the episode and blah, blah, blah. By the way, I thought we were not connected on LinkedIn. And the answer was, I'm not looking for a job. I said, I never said that. I said, we're not connected on LinkedIn. They said, no, I'm not looking for a job or a career change, so I'm not active on LinkedIn. So that's there as well. Okay, last question. Ismail says, how do you see digital customer engagement in Africa compared to the European or US monetized model? And do you have stake in its scalability? And that's a very interesting question. We always land up ignoring Africa. We talk about Europe, Asia, US, Africa gets missed. So I think that's a very, very important question, and I want you to take that question. So guys, who wants to go first?
Yeah, I don't have numbers, but what I see is Africa is developing the wish to go social a lot. I've seen during some SAP events with all sales from all the world coming together. And I had a booth explaining how they could use social media. And I saw all those Africans coming to me and asking questions, and they were so interesting. And unfortunately, they said our internet is not so good. So I think they're following, they just have to follow the infrastructure. So when infrastructure will be better and better, they will make a blast, because there's really motivation in Africa, and especially because it's a big continent, it's enormous, and so they need it. And at the moment they can't travel, so they really need it, and so Africa is developing so far much more than the old Europe.
Stuff. Anyone else?
Seeing a lot of change taking place in Africa. I mentioned the Hootsuite and We Are Social data. If you check that out, people that are watching, it has a slice not just in Europe, but basically the slice is all over the world. So you can, wherever you are, it's got data from the particular area. We're seeing Africa really develop, not just in English, but in French and Arabic. My first book, Social Selling, Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers, is available in Arabic. And we're seeing a big take-up in Africa. Yeah.
Good stuff. Anyone else? Any comments on this?
I just have one comment about the cultural. Sorry, Sally, go for it.
No. I was just going to say, I was just going to fill the gap and say I'd love to comment, but I'm not in a position to, so take it.
Well, I don't have any perspective on digital customer engagement, but we did do some analysis for a billionaire in Nigeria, and the interesting thing from the social media conversations were that they were celebrating wealth, whereas in other countries it's wrong to talk about wealth. And so I thought it was just a very interesting cultural, when we analyzed it, we thought, oh my God, this person's talking about how much money they have. This is going to cause a massive crisis. And actually everyone said, well done, that's such a good story, and celebrated. So I think it's just important to understand the cultural differences as well as the infrastructural elements that Sylvie said. And that was kind of nice to see, because they were so proud that they could operate on an economic footing with maybe with the Western world. So it was just a nice anecdote that we found.
Yeah, Tim, I love that you mentioned the cultural thing, because you have to think about this when you're communicating, especially to the whole world, that some people are communicating differently and receiving messages differently. So that in Arabic countries, for example, they always talk about something intimate like family, friends, health, and you don't go into business directly. So you have to take this into account, the way you communicate to different cultures.
Very, very good. Thank you, guys. That was the audience Q&A. Very well done. Any exciting success stories that you want to share? Social media, influencer, B2B technology story that it comes to mind that you want to share? That's the platform.
So I did some work with Tim many years ago. I don't know if Tim remembers this. And what we did was that we looked at the content that we were going to use. And we actually used the content as a way of whether and influence and the influencers to see whether that would resonate with the market. So on the basis that we knew that if the influencers were talking about particular subjects, cloud, SaaS, as it would have been in those days, then what we did was that we saw if they're talking about it, then that's great. But what we also did was we flipped that on its head. If the influencers were not talking about a subject, we knew that we were in market creation mode, and that has a different impact in your go-to-market and your marketing mix. So we used influencer marketing to, in effect, to work out where our budget was going, where the message was going, and whether the content was right or wrong, or just because it's wrong, it could be right. So that's one example. You probably don't remember that, Tim.
I do. I recall it as if it was yesterday.
Okay, of course you do.
I recall many people walking into the room and us both like pitching the concepts to whoever would listen at the time.
I have a funny story. It's a personal story, so it's not a really a success, but you know, I mentioned that sometimes people just follow you, but they don't react, and there's a lot of them. I think more than 60% of them do not react, even if they follow you. And I was buying trousers in a store, and I was going to pay, and I gave my name for the rewards card. And the people waiting just close to me said, "Oh, but I know you. I follow you on LinkedIn." And I said, "Oh my God, that's the beginning of fame." And but that shows that you have lots of people you don't even know they exist, but they just following you. So that was my funny story.
No, and I think Sally too had that. I had one. I was having a beer with someone. Someone walked past and shook hands and said, "Oh, Shelly, how are you?" Interesting. I follow you on LinkedIn. Anyways, that's good. And Sally had that at the airport. Remember, Sally?
Yeah, I've had it on quite a few occasions. Probably the funniest one was I was walking to go to a meeting. I think it was actually in the British Consul General's office in Sydney. and I was walking past this outside of al fresco bar, and this guy comes running, screaming, "Sally!" and he's like almost jumping over chairs, and he came up and shook my hand, and I was just like, I have no idea who you are. And he's like, "I see you on LinkedIn," and I was like, okay, like no need for the drama. So it's pretty cool though, and I think that goes to show those sorts of interactions. For example, like the one you had as well, Sylvie. I think that really goes to show you. Real tangible influence where you emotionally connect with people, even outside of a business environment. And I think that's really what's most important, which goes back to the conversation we were having earlier around really building what I always sort of refer to as like emotional equity with an audience, because only then can you really sincerely influence them. Yeah.
Good stuff. Guys, thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure having all of you on the show. It was great fun. I enjoyed it. I'm sure you did too. And
That's been great.
Wonderful. Thank you.
We need to do a
Thank you very
clubhouse.
much, Sally.
Oh yeah, let's
Thank you.
Good stuff.
And see you
Thank
on
you. Bye
Clubhouse,
now,
guys.
and I'll see you later.
Bye.
Thank you very much,
Bye
Shelley.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.